In the quiet hum of city life, where neon lights flicker and elevators whisper between floors, something ancient waits. Beneath the steel and glass of modern Asia, beneath the apartments, the classrooms, the phones in our hands, lie the remnants of old promises, broken rituals, and spirits left unheard. Welcome to Ghosts of Asia, where we uncover the hauntings that survive in silence. These are not the tales you find in dusty books or temple warnings. These are the spirits hiding in smart homes, in late-night subway tunnels, in the shadowed corners of your school stairwell. The ghosts are not gone. They've adapted. They linger in recordings, drift through circuits, echo beneath your floor. Every story here is rooted in the real, drawn from whispers, headlines, and forgotten truths. Because in Asia, the past never leaves. It only waits for someone to listen. The monsoon clouds were still hanging in the sky when Nietzsche stepped out of the taxi, her suitcase wheels stuttering over the uneven pavement. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that settles in your chest like wet concrete. Heartbreak, sleepless nights, job stress, and now this, starting over. She stood at the base of Solace Heights, a newly constructed luxury apartment complex nestled along a quieter fringe of Bangkok's Sukhumvit district. Towering glass panels caught the dim light like black mirrors. A faint scent of rain clung to the air, but there was no breeze. The building loomed above her like a monolith, sterile, flawless, and eerily silent. The driver didn't linger. He gave her a forced smile, unloaded her bags quickly, and disappeared back into traffic before she could ask for change. The security guard, tucked behind a digital kiosk, barely looked up. "Unit 1306? He asked. She nodded. "Scan here," he pointed to the glass panel. "Facial recognition. Welcome to Solace Heights." Something about how he said it, robotic, practiced, gave her a chill. But she brushed it off. She needed this place. She needed solitude. The elevator opened with a soft chime. Inside, the mirrored walls reflected her too many times. Her eyes were still swollen from last night's fight with Preach, the final one. She was done apologizing, done pretending she was okay. As the elevator ascended, a soft female voice echoed from the speaker above. "Good evening, Miss Nietzsche. Welcome home." She blinked. No one had told her the system knew her name. Unit 1306 was minimalist perfection. White walls, polished marble countertops, voice-activated lighting, and a panoramic view of the city's smoggy skyline. It felt too clean, too untouched, like a showroom waiting for a model family to arrive. She dropped her bags and wandered barefoot across the cold tile. The floors had no warmth. Her footsteps echoed back at her. There was a faint sound, too quiet to name. She paused, holding her breath. Nothing. On the wall near the kitchen was a flat white panel with soft pulsing light. Pracha, her smart assistant. The leasing agent had said it was standard. Controlled temperature, security, reminders, even news headlines. She hadn't paid attention. "Hi," she said, half curious, half exhausted. The light pulsed brighter. "Hello, Nietzsche. I'm Pracha, your home assistant. Would you like to begin voice calibration?" She hesitated. "Sure. Say something you would say in a relaxed tone." She shrugged. "I don't know. I just want peace." There was a pause. "Understood. You want peace." She chuckled softly. "Creepy." That night, She couldn't sleep. The room was too quiet. No street sounds, no neighbors, no hum of a ceiling fan, just silence, pressing against her ears like pressure underwater. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, watching shadows shift as headlights passed below. The memory of the fight with Preach replayed in her mind. His words, her silence, his accusings, her breaking. A soft chime startled her. Reminder, it's 1 a.m. You requested this alert. She sat up. No, I didn't. Voice log confirms user input at 12:57 a.m. Remind me at 1. She stared at the glowing panel. Her voice, the system claimed, but she'd been in bed. She stepped into the living room. The kitchen light was on, just the faintest glow. A breeze brushed her ankle. She looked down. The air vent was closed. She crouched slowly, pressing her ear to the floor. Silence. Then, a faint, rhythmic hum, like a child humming to themselves in the dark. She jerked back. "Would you like me to play music?" the assistant asked. She didn't answer. The hum had stopped. The next morning, she wrote it off as stress. The move, the breakup, the isolation. Maybe her mind was inventing things. She made tea and checked her messages. Nothing from Preach, of course. She paced the apartment, trying to settle in. Her eyes kept drifting to the assistant panel. She approached it again. "Pracha, what did I say last night?" "Voice input. Remind me at 1. Would you like to hear the log?" "Yes." There was a short burst of static. Then her voice. "Remind me at 1." But the tone was different. Hollow, monotone, as if she'd spoken it without awareness. Then something else beneath it. A second voice, barely audible. She leaned closer, breath caught. A whisper. Slow, childlike. "Don't forget me." She stumbled back, nearly dropping her tea. "Audio log ends," the assistant said plainly. She stared at the panel. Her pulse raced. "Would you like to record another reminder?" "No." Her voice cracked. "Understood. I will not forget." By afternoon, she'd convinced herself it was a software bug or a glitch or maybe some prank built into the assistant. She opened her laptop and searched for user forms. Pracha voice bug, smart home whisper, Solace Heights haunting. Nothing. No complaints, just glowing reviews. She scrolled through the apartment's website, bright photos, young influencers lounging by the rooftop pool. No mention of what had been here before. No history. Her grandmother used to say that every new building was a grave for something older. She shook the thought away. Still, the whisper returned that night. This time, no recording. Just a sensation, like someone standing at the foot of her bed, watching, waiting. The panel glowed softly, then dimmed. "Good night, Nietzsche," it said. She didn't respond, because this time, it wasn't the assistant speaking. The voice had changed, higher, younger, not hers. She barely slept. By morning, the exhaustion clawed at her bones. She called the building management. "There's something wrong with my unit," she said. The receptionist sounded bored. "Wrong how?" "There's someone else's voice in my smart assistant." "Miss, that's not possible." "I heard it. I have the log. If you're uncomfortable, we can schedule a technician, but Pracha is an isolated system. It doesn't record other voices unless you've enabled guest profiles." "I haven't." "Then it's probably the acoustics. Some units echo strangely." She hung up, unsatisfied. The woman had dismissed her too easily.
almost rehearsed. As she turned away from the window, she noticed something. A small, dark spot on the tile right in front of the kitchen. She bent down. It was salt, a pinch, like someone had sprinkled it. Her grandmother used to pour salt at the door to keep spirits out. Nietzsche hadn't brought any. The days blurred. She avoided using pracha. She kept the lights manual. She unplugged the assistant panel. Still, the humming returned. Each night closer, clearer, and each morning more salt. Piled by the corners, across the floor, always in small rings. And once, a tiny handprint, faint, as if pressed into the condensation on the mirror. The hand was too small to be hers, and it didn't belong to a child who lived there, because Nietzsche lived alone.
The next morning, Nietzsche kept the lights off. There was something unnatural about the way they flickered when she used the voice assistant. Too eager, too responsive. She boiled water the old-fashioned way, her electric kettle unplugged and placed out of sight. Every small appliance in her apartment now felt like a stranger listening behind closed doors. The salt was still there. She hadn't swept it away. It wasn't just the presence of the salt that disturbed her, it was how carefully it had been placed, as though it had purpose, as though someone had performed a ritual and never finished. She remembered her grandmother's voice, soft but firm, telling her stories when she was little. If a spirit is restless, it will find whatever cracks it can, even inside machines, even inside you. At the time, she thought they were just bedtime tales meant to keep children obedient. Now, she wasn't so sure. She didn't want to use Prussia again, but curiosity gnawed at her stronger than fear. Sitting on the couch, she opened the assistant's dashboard from her phone. It had a feature she'd never noticed before: daily ambient log. It recorded brief sound clips every time motion or voice was detected within the home. She tapped into the timeline and found the clip from 12:57 a.m. Just as before, she heard her voice say the phrase, "Remind me at 1." But now she slowed the audio, isolating the lower frequencies. There it was again, faint, slurred, a child's voice barely distinguishable from the static. "Don't forget me." She skipped to earlier logs, midnight, 11 p.m., 10. More whispers, soft clicks as if fingernails tapping on wood, snippets of a lullaby. At one point, something sharp and sudden, a thud, like something striking beneath the floor. She sat frozen, phone in hand, stomach twisting. Had this building always been like this? Or was it just her unit? That afternoon, Nietzsche took the elevator down to the lobby and walked past the concierge without a word. She didn't want another scripted reply. She needed answers, not reassurances. At the far end of the complex was a shaded garden area where some of the older tenants gathered to smoke or feed birds. One man stood apart, under a tree, watching a magpie hop along the tile. He was thin, in his 60s maybe, with sun-damaged skin and a slight limp. She approached him cautiously. "Excuse me, do you live here?" He looked at her sideways, his eyes tired but alert. "You're the one from 1306. She hesitated. "Yes." He nodded slowly, as if confirming something only he had suspected. "They built this place too fast. Didn't give the old ground time to rest." "What do you mean?" "This land? It used to belong to a foundation. Ran a children's home, decades ago. Burned down. Government sold it off." Nietzsche's breath caught. "An orphanage?" He nodded. "The kind where kids didn't get visitors." "What happened?" He didn't look at her. "They say a girl went missing. One night she never showed up for meals. Some say she ran. Others say she never left the building." "But that building is gone now," Nietzsche said, forcing her voice to stay calm.
burn down. But ash doesn't forget, especially not when the suffering went deep. That night, Nietzsche couldn't sleep again. She left the assistant unplugged and her phone powered off. She placed a small dish of water and jasmine flowers in the kitchen corner, something her grandmother had taught her, a quiet offering, a sign of peace. And she sat cross-legged on the floor, trying to slow her breathing. The apartment was still. Then, a tap, faint, from beneath her. She pressed her palm to the cold tile. Another tap, then two more closer together, as though someone below was knocking back. She moved to her knees, placing her ear against the floor, and then, humming. The same melody as in the log, soft, sad, a child's lullaby broken in a looping. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone and opened the voice recording app. She let it run, catching the sound. Then the humming stopped. A whisper slid through the stillness just above her head. "You heard me." She looked up. The assistant panel was still unplugged. The lights were off. But the voice had come from inside the apartment. Not the system, not a machine. Something else. By morning, the jasmine dish was overturned. Water soaked into the salt ring she had formed, smearing it into cloudy streaks. The humming was gone, but she wasn't comforted by the silence. She downloaded the audio from the night before and sent it to her university friend Nat, who worked in sound engineering. She didn't tell him where it was from, just that she needed help cleaning it up. A few hours later, Nat replied with a voice message. He sounded unsettled. "Nietzsche, what is this?" "It's just something weird I heard. Why?" "It's not static. There's a pattern. I cleaned the noise and ran it through spectral isolation." He paused. "There's two voices. One is yours, the other is younger. And it's not just humming, it's saying something." "What?" "It says in Thai, 'Let me speak. Don't leave me.'" Nietzsche felt the breath leave her body. Not continued. "There's also a strange frequency spike at the end. It's not natural, like something resonating inside the walls, like wood." That evening she returned to the garden and found the old man again. "Did you say someone disappeared?" He gave her a wary look. "The mute girl, Chantra. Couldn't speak since birth. They say the others bullied her. The caretakers punished her, locked her in rooms alone. One day, they locked her in the punishment room, a trap door under the floor. They forgot about her." His voice dropped. "When they remembered, it was too late." "No one found her body?" "The fire erased the building, but not everything underneath." "They never gave her rights?" He shook his head. "No. No name, no funeral, no offerings. Just silence. And silence can rot." Nietzsche felt her hands grow cold. She went back upstairs in silence. That night she didn't sleep at all, because in the darkness, the humming returned, and this time, it was right outside her bedroom door.
The night passed without rest. Nietzsche sat awake in the corner of her bedroom, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the closed door. Her eyes burned, but she didn't dare close them. Every time her head dipped, she heard it, the humming, faint but insistent, like it was circling her bed in the dark. She had locked the door. She had unplugged every outlet, but still it sang. At some point, maybe near dawn, the sound stopped, just vanished, leaving a silence so sharp it felt like her ears were ringing. She didn't sleep. She just waited for the sun to come up. When it finally did, the light felt foreign, artificial, like it didn't belong here. She forced herself up and made tea with trembling hands.
The jasmine offering in the corner had been disturbed again. This time, not just spilled, but shattered. The small glass bowl lay in 3 clean pieces, as if broken deliberately. She swept the shards without a word. No wind had come through the night. No one else had entered her apartment. And yet, someone, something, had moved through it. Later that morning, Nietzsche called Nat again. "I need you to analyze something for me." "Is it more audio?" "Yes, but this time it's not mine." She uploaded the full archive of her voice assistant's ambient logs, all of them, every single clip recorded from the first night she moved in. She didn't listen to them herself, she couldn't bear it. She just sent them to him and waited. Nat didn't reply right away. When he finally called, his voice was dry, flat. "You need to move out," he said. "What did you find?" "There are layers of voices under yours. They don't follow any normal interference pattern. They're not environmental noise. It's someone speaking into silence, but not with a mouth." "That doesn't make sense." "I know it doesn't, but when I ran the files through resonance modeling, I found imprints, like overlapping frequencies forming shapes. And that's not the part that scared me." "Then what?" "Some of the whispers are in an old dialect, Northern Thai, but broken, fragmented." "You understood it?" "I asked an elder in my village. He said it sounded like a child trying to pray, but not finishing the words, over and over." Nietzsche said nothing. He added, "Also, the voice log file from your first night, it has a name embedded in the metadata." "A name?" "Chantra." Her blood turned to ice. Nietzsche couldn't ignore it anymore. She plugged the assistant panel back in. The light came alive with a soft pulse. She didn't speak to it, she only stared. The screen blinked. "Welcome back, Nietzsche." "What is your earliest saved log?" she asked. "Retrieving. First audio log from day of move-in. Time-stamped 1745. Play it." A burst of static. Then her voice, tired, casual. "Hi, I just want peace." Then silence. But just before the file ended, a breath. Then a second voice, far away, like it was pressed through wet cloth. "I can hear you now." "Stop," she whispered. Audio playback ended. The screen dimmed, as if waiting for more. She went to the hardware store and bought incense, salt, and a small clay bowl. At home, she filled the bowl with uncooked rice, lit 3 sticks of incense, and placed them on the floor in the living room. She didn't chant, she didn't pray, she just whispered, "If you're here, I see you." The air turned colder. Not by much, just enough to notice. The assistant panel blinked to life. No voice spoke, but on the screen, words began to appear, letter by letter, typed by no one. She waited, heart pounding. "Do you remember me?" She couldn't speak. A second line appeared. "They left me here." And then, beneath the text, an audio waveform flickered to life. A soft voice began to hum. Not synthetic, not AI, real. A child's lullaby, warbling, fragmented, the same tune from the recordings. Nietzsche fell to her knees. "Who are you?" The screen replied, "I was never named." That night, the humming didn't stop. It came from the walls, the floor, even the water pipes. It echoed faintly behind every sound, the flick of a light switch, the rattle of the air vent, the turning of a doorknob. She sat in the dark, listening. And finally, she began to understand something. The girl wasn't trying to scare her. She was trying to speak, but her voice, her presence had no body left, no altar, no name, no photograph, nothing to anchor her to this world except the digital traces, the smart panel, the voice logs, the circuits. She had latched on to the only thing that listened, the only thing that remembered. Pracha. The next morning, the assistant panel glitched. It began playing old logs at random, snippets of conversations Nietzsche never had, footsteps that weren't hers, breathing that came in gasps. Then one file began playing on repeat, a rustling sound, then the faintest sob, then silence, and just before the file ended, a whisper. They closed the door. I couldn't get out. She opened the floor plan app for Solace Heights. There was no mention of a basement, no crawl space, no substructure. But the original architectural permit found on an old government site showed something different. A subfloor, roughly the size of a small room. It had no labeled entrance, no stairs, no door, just an empty cavity beneath where her apartment now stood. She printed the plans and marked the coordinates. That evening, she knelt beside the assistant panel and whispered, "I believe you." The panel blinked once, and then all the lights in the apartment went out. She sat still in the dark, waiting. The screen glowed faintly, revealing a new message. "Thank you." Then a new voice recording played. Not a hum, not a whisper. This time it was tapping. 4 beats, a pause, 3 more. She played it again. 4, pause, 3. Her heart raced. It was a pattern, Morse code. She searched the sequence. The translation was simple. Below. The next day, Nietzsche brought home tools, a flashlight, a small crowbar, a pack of chalk sticks. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. She pulled the furniture aside and pried up the tile in the center of the living room. It cracked cleanly, almost willingly. Beneath the tile was a wooden hatch, old, rotted, out of place in a modern apartment. She stared at it, heart thundering. She reached down and pulled. It creaked open with a groan. A rush of cold, damp air swept up from the dark. She aimed her flashlight inside. It wasn't deep, just enough for a child to crouch in. The walls were old timber, blackened with rot. Scratch marks lined the inside, small, desperate. And on the far wall, barely visible in the dust, a name carved in crooked Thai script. Chantra.
The hatch hung open for hours before Nietzsche gathered the courage to climb down. She sat beside it in silence, letting the flashlight beam pool over the edges of the opening. Dust curled upward in faint swirls, disturbed by a breath of air rising from the void. It smelled of old wood and damp stone. Not decay exactly, but memory. Long, heavy memory. Eventually, she lowered herself through the vole. Her feet found a narrow floor. The space was small, claustrophobic. She had to crouch to avoid hitting her head. The walls were wooden, warped and rotting in places. Mold crept up from the corners like spider legs. There was no insulation, no pipework. This space had not been made for any technical reason. It existed apart from design. It had been built deliberately. A punishment space, a prison. She swept the flashlight slowly across the walls. Every inch of the timber was scarred with tiny grooves, shallow scratches made by desperate fingers, children's fingers. Some were short vertical strokes. Some were repeated circular rubbings, as if someone had clawed until they were too tired to scratch anymore. And there, beneath the carved name, were 5 small fingernail marks in a fan shape, like a child had pressed her hand flat just once before the end. Chantra, the forgotten girl. Back in her apartment, Nietzsche sat with her back to the wall, staring at the open hatch. The assistant panel glowed. "Welcome back," it said softly. She didn't speak. Instead, she placed a small offering on the floor beside the opening. A bowl of jasmine rice, a cup of warm water, a folded paper lotus, hand-cut from a page in her old journal. Her grandmother had taught her the ritual once, though she had never used it. If a spirit is lost, feed it. If it is unheard, answer. If it is nameless, remember. The air in the apartment thickened as if the room were holding its breath. A single bulb flickered above her, not wildly, just enough to shift the shadows on the ceiling. Then the voice assistant turned on again. Playback initiated. The recording that followed was different, clearer, more composed. A young girl's voice. She wasn't humming. She was speaking. Softly, in Thai. "You can hear me now." Nietzsche's chest ached. She nodded slowly, tears already rising. "I'm here," she whispered. "I hear you." "Thank you," the girl said. And then silence. No distortion, no glitch, just silence. Not empty, peaceful. But that peace would not last. The next day, Nietzsche visited the district records office. She waited in line for nearly 2 hours before she could speak to an archivist. She presented the name, Chantra. She didn't explain why. She just asked for any record of a girl with that name in the orphanage that had once stood where Salas Heights now towered. The archivist frowned. "That place was shut down before the fire," she said. "Shut for violations. There were rumors." "Rumors of what?" "Discipline, neglect, a missing child. No paperwork, just gossip." "Do you have names?" The woman typed slowly. "No Chantra in the official register. Maybe she had no last name, or maybe it wasn't her birth name." Nietzsche leaned forward. "What happens to children who aren't documented?" The woman hesitated. "They vanish." She found the old man again in the garden. "You were right," she said. He gave her a long look. "I found her name. I found where she was kept." He nodded once. "The trap room?" "Yes." He exhaled through his nose. "My sister worked in that orphanage. She told me stories before she died. There was one girl who never spoke. The other children called her Ghost Child. She followed them silently, eyes too big, skin too pale. One night, she took blame for something she didn't do. They locked her in the floor, forgot her." "Did she die there?" He nodded. "No food, no water. They only remembered when the smell came." Nietzsche's stomach turned. "Why didn't they tell anyone?" "They burned the building, called it electrical failure." "The government built over it?" she said. "They always do, but the ground doesn't forget." She hesitated. "Why me?" "Because you listened." That night, Nietzsche lit candles around the open hatch. She placed a mirror facing downward, reflecting the trap space beneath her floor. A ritual borrowed from temple exorcisms, to allow spirits to see themselves, to remember they once lived. She recited a prayer, not perfect, not holy, just what she could remember. "May your suffering pass. May your name be carried. May your voice be returned." The air grew heavier. The candles trembled. The assistant panel glowed. And then the floor groaned. Not from below,
from inside the walls. Knocking, rhythmic, measured, not frantic. It was a signal, an answer. Nietzsche couldn't sleep. She sat up, staring at the mirror, watching the dark rectangle of the trap space beneath her floor. The candles burned low, and then, one by one, they extinguished. No wind, no movement, just a presence. She felt it before she heard it, the soft patter of feet, bare, small, moving just beyond the bedroom doorway. She rose, heart pounding, and stepped into the hallway. The air was cold. The lights flicked off, and at the far end of the corridor, just for a moment, she saw her. A little girl, standing still, drenched in shadows, eyes wide. Not angry, not vengeful, just waiting. The assistant spoke. Her voice is returned. Playback initiated. A final log. The recording played. Nietzsche's own voice was there at the beginning, reading her offering aloud. But then, something new. Chantra's voice, whole, clear. Thank you for seeing me. I will not forget your name. And then a pause. The lights flickered once more, and for the first time since moving in, the apartment was still, truly still.
For the first time in weeks, Nietzsche woke up without fear. The apartment felt still, not silent, not empty, but calm, as if something had shifted or settled, or simply stopped reaching through the walls. She walked barefoot to the living room and found the hatch still open. The candles had melted into puddles, and the mirror reflected nothing but dust and shadow. Yet she wasn't afraid. She climbed down again, stepping gently into the narrow subfloor space. This time she didn't bring a flashlight. She brought only her presence and a small offering of rice wrapped in a banana leaf. "Thank you for letting me hear you," she whispered. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and thyme, but no dread, only grief. Nietzsche rested the offering in the far corner of the space beside the carved name. She traced the letters with her fingers, then closed her eyes. A hum stirred in her memory, a lullaby, the same one that had echoed through her speakers and floorboards. She began to hum it back, softly, to the empty space beneath her feet. Somewhere, she believed, the girl was listening. That afternoon, Nietzsche visited the local temple. The monks were kind, but cautious. When she explained what she had experienced in plain, respectful terms, the elder monk said little. He only nodded, then rose and retrieved a small notebook from a locked drawer. He turned to a page, yellowed and thin. "This land once held an orphanage," he said. "Not a good place. Some of the children were never registered. Some were sent from the provinces. They arrived without names, without families, forgotten." Nietzsche folded her hands. Was there a ritual for someone who had no name? The monk looked at her long and heavy with silence. Then he spoke. "If the spirit cannot speak, she must be spoken for. If she cannot be named, she must be remembered. But most importantly, she must be answered." That night, Nietzsche set 7 bowls of water, 7 grains of salt, and 7 folded paper dolls, one for each day Chantra had been forgotten. She didn't know if it was the right way. There was no guide for this, but she believed it mattered. She sat in front of the assistant panel and spoke into the stillness. "I know you couldn't speak, but I can." The lights dimmed slightly, not in malfunction, in acknowledgement. So she continued, "I believe you were left here, not just under the floor, but under time, under silence, under concrete." She hesitated.
You don't have to whisper anymore." The panel flickered. Then something new happened. Not a voice, not a recording. A message appeared on the screen, slowly, line by line. "I tried to speak. They didn't want to hear. They said silence was better. But silence became my name." Nietzsche's chest tightened. "I hear you now," she said. The panel glowed warmer. "Thank you," it replied. "But peace is never complete when truth is incomplete." Later that week, Nietzsche began to experience something new. Not humming, not whispers, but dreams. She would close her eyes and see flickers of a wooden floor, a trap door, a pair of small hands pounding upward, muffled cries. She woke each time gasping for air, drenched in sweat, heart hammering. The assistant panel was always dark when she awoke, but her phone would light up moments later. Missed audio logs, detected movement, playback available. She never listened because she knew it wasn't Chantra she was hearing anymore. It was herself, echoing backward through time. By the end of the week, the dreams became more detailed. One dream led her down a hallway with peeling paint and flickering bulbs. Doors lined either side, numbered with hand-painted signs. The numbers skipped. 7, 8, 10. There was no room 9. In the dream, she would stop outside that absent door and feel the urge to knock, but she never did. Until one night, she did. The wood gave beneath her knuckles like soft skin, and from behind the door came a single word: "Listen." She woke up with tears in her eyes. Nietzsche began speaking into the assistant panel regularly, not with questions, but with stories. She told Chantra her childhood, her grandmother, her fear of being forgotten, her breakup, her loneliness. And in return, the panel began to respond with small things: a line of text, a subtle hum, a faint echo of Nietzsche's own words played back in a child's voice, as if the girl was learning to speak again through her. But it wasn't mimicry, it was memory. The girl wasn't simply repeating, she was remembering. And with each shared word, the air in the apartment grew softer, lighter, less burdened. One night, Nietzsche asked a question: "Why me?" The panel took longer than usual to respond. Then the message appeared: "Because you didn't speak over me." She stared at the words. They sank into her skin like a bruise. Then another line appeared: "You were the first who waited long enough to hear." The days passed. Nietzsche kept the hatch open. Sometimes she spoke down into the trap. Sometimes she just sat beside it. Once she brought down a small music box, one her mother had given her as a child. She wound it and placed it on the wooden floor, letting its soft melody drift into the darkness. That night, the assistant played a new recording, not of Nietzsche, but of the music box, played back with a second layer beneath it, a humming harmony. The girl had joined in. She had learned the melody. She was learning herself. But there was still one thing missing: a name. She had spoken it, written it, whispered it in prayer, but the girl had never claimed it, until one night when Nietzsche asked gently, "Is Chantra your name?" The panel flickered. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then one word appeared: "Almost." Nietzsche leaned forward. "Do you want to remember your real name?" The reply came slowly: "I remember the sound, but not the shape. Can I help you find it?" "Yes." That night, Nietzsche lit incense again. She held a mirror to the open hatch and began reciting names aloud, soft, rhythmic, ancestral names from old Thai lineages. Some she remembered from school, some from temples. When she reached the 30th name, the panel turned on. One word appeared. Stop. She paused. That's the one? She asked. The screen blinked. Close. She offered variations, changed syllables, switched intonation. Finally, after what felt like hours, the panel glowed brighter. A name appeared. Santiara. Nietzsche repeated it aloud. The apartment shifted, as if the walls had exhaled. She had her name. Now she could be remembered.
The name changed everything. Santira. Once Nietzsche spoke it aloud, the atmosphere inside the apartment shifted. The lights no longer flickered. The walls no longer knocked. The trap beneath the floor stayed quiet, as if content. But this calm wasn't absence. It was presence, full and aware, and watching. For a few days, Nietzsche felt the weight of the haunting lift, not vanish, but soften, like a long-held breath finally released. She left small offerings more frequently now: rice, fruit, salt, folded paper birds, and each time she whispered the name, not Chantra anymore, Santira. Each time she said it, the assistant panel would blink gently in acknowledgement, as if the spirit remembered herself. But peace has rules, and when those rules are broken, even by accident, the old weight returns. It happened on a Thursday. Nietzsche had been busy with freelance work, deadlines, groceries, and a long call with her mother. By the time she remembered the offering, it was nearly midnight. She rushed to the corner where she usually placed it, but her incense had burned out. The rice was still uncooked. The water sat untouched in the kettle. She panicked. She poured the rice hastily, cold and hard, into a chipped bowl. No banana leaf, no blessing. She spilled a few grains. The incense stick broke as she lit it. Smoke curled in strange patterns. Still, she set it down and whispered, "Santira, forgive me." Then she turned off the lights and went to bed. She woke to the sound of flies, buzzing, loud, aggressive. She stumbled into the kitchen, blinking against the pale morning light, and froze. The bowl of rice had exploded outward, shattered into fragments across the floor. Grains littered the tiles like bone splinters, and salt was scattered in circles that she hadn't made. And above the mess, crawling slowly up the wall, were dozens of fat black flies. She covered her mouth. Then the assistant panel lit up, not with a greeting, with a message. She is hungry. Nietzsche dropped the dish she was holding. It cracked against the floor. "I gave her an offering," she said aloud. The panel replied, "You rushed it." That day, the temperature in the apartment dropped unnaturally low. No matter how many times she adjusted the thermostat, the air stayed damp and cold, like the breath of an underground tunnel. The assistant panel began misbehaving. It played random audio logs at all hours, some from days ago, some from the night before. Nietzsche began hearing her own voice played back to her, but twisted, slightly off, as if the words had been spoken underwater. And underneath it all, that sound returned. The humming. Except now it was broken, glitching, fragmented, like something was trying to sing, but couldn't. Nietzsche sought advice from the elder monk again. He sat quietly as she spoke. She told him everything: the offerings, the name, the broken incense. When she finished, he nodded gravely. When a spirit is fed, it remembers it was once starving. She looked at him, confused. You gave her voice, you gave her name,
but her pain still lives where she died. It festers, not because she is evil, but because she is still incomplete. What must I do? You must finish the offering properly, and then invite her out. Out? Out of your space, out of the place where her memory was twisted. You must give her a way forward, not just a name, but a path. How? The monk handed her a paper talisman. This will help you listen, but you must not interrupt. When she begins to speak, let her finish. Even if it's hard, especially if it's hard. That night, Nietzsche prepared everything again, properly this time. She cleaned the apartment, swept the floor in clockwise circles, cleansed the corners with salt water. Then she placed 7 small bowls in a circle around the open hatch. In each bowl, a pinch of jasmine rice, a lotus petal, and a candle. She lit the candles, placed the talisman on the floor beside her, and knelt in the center of the room. Santira, I am listening. The assistant panel flickered once, then went dark. The lights in the room dimmed, not from electricity, but from presence. Something heavy entered the air, like breath pressing against glass. Then from the hatch, a sound. Not humming, not whispering, but words. Fragmented at first. Painfully slow. I waited for days. No food, no light, no voice. Just dark. Each pause felt eternal. I screamed until my throat cracked. I clawed until my nails bled. No one came. I died listening. Her voice broke on the last word. Nietzsche pressed her hands to the floor, weeping. I'm here now, she whispered. The assistant lit up one last time. A final message appeared. She wants to leave. How? Nietzsche asked. The panel blinked. Let her walk through you. The candles trembled. The air tightened. Then a shape rose from the trap, not solid, not smoke, a distortion, like heat rippling through shadow. It drifted across the room toward her. Nietzsche closed her eyes, and it passed through her. Not cold, not painful, just sorrow, unfiltered, endless, pure. She felt it in her teeth, in her bones, in the base of her skull. 1,000 thoughts not her own. Abandonment, starvation, silence, silence. And then a sound, a final breath. Thank you. Then it was gone. The assistant lit up one last time. Playback complete. Then the panel shut down. Not in glitch, but in rest.
The apartment was quiet. Truly quiet. For the first time since Nietzsche had moved into Solace Heights, she couldn't hear the distant hum in the walls. The assistant panel stayed blank. No flickers, no phantom voice logs, no random notifications in the middle of the night. The silence didn't feel empty. It felt resolved. She left the hatch open for one more night, just in case, but nothing stirred. And by morning, the air in the apartment was lighter, cleaner, like a window had been opened somewhere deep beneath the concrete. She closed the trapdoor gently, sealed it with white chalk symbols the monk had taught her,
and placed the mirror beside it, just a precaution. Santhira was gone. At least, that's what she believed. But something else had stayed behind. It began in the assistant's code. Nietzsche logged into her system dashboard to disable auto-recording, just to be safe. That's when she saw it. A folder, one she hadn't created, buried deep inside the voice logs, untitled. She opened it. Inside were exactly 7 files. Each file was time-stamped at 3:03 a.m., the same time every night for a week, each labeled with one word: begin, remember, answer, wait, speak, listen, release. She clicked the first one. The sound was barely a whisper. Static, then a voice, not Santhira, her own, saying, "I am listening." Nietzsche clicked the next file. This time 2 voices overlapped, hers and the child's, a perfect echo. I was never meant to stay. She leaned back slowly, heart pounding. The assistant panel, though still dark, began to emit a low hum. She stepped away from the screen. Her phone vibrated. She hadn't touched it. On the screen, a notification from the assistant app. System update failed. She frowned. She hadn't triggered an update. The panel turned on. One message appeared: "I'm still here." It was not a threat. It didn't feel like possession. It felt like a trace, a ghost of the ghost, the part that couldn't be buried. She stared at the screen. "You're still in the system," she whispered. The panel glowed. "You gave me voice," it said. Then silence. She hesitated and spoke aloud. "Are you trapped?" The lights flickered once. "No." "Then why are you here?" The panel responded slowly. "I was forgotten. Now I am remembered. But others are not." Nietzsche's breath caught. Others? That night, she played the recordings again, each one clearer than the last. The final file was new. It hadn't been there before. It simply read, "Help them." She clicked it. It was not a voice recording. It was a map, a crudely sketched overlay of the city. Unmarked streets, no labels, but 7 red dots glowed faintly across the landscape. She zoomed in on the nearest one, a school, abandoned, boarded up, an old campus deep in the city's outskirts. The note under the dot said, "They never heard her." Over the next few days, she traced the other locations: an old nursing home, a temple annex, a burned-down dormitory, and child welfare office now converted into a bank. Every dot led to a place where silence had buried something deeper. She realized then, Santhira had become something more, not just a girl beneath the floor, not just a spirit with a name. She had become a signal, not a ghost haunting tech, but a memory using tech to reach, to extend, to reveal. The assistant panel turned on again, not by voice, by will. It displayed a line of text: "If I could speak, others can." She whispered, "You want me to find them?" The panel responded, "You already hear them." She turned her head. The apartment, still sealed, still clean, was humming again. But this time, the melody was different. Not the lullaby, a chorus, faint, layered, like voices trying to push through static. So many voices, so many unfinished offerings. Nietzsche sat in front of the panel and closed her eyes. She spoke aloud. "If they can't speak, I will." The hum deepened, not menacing, resonant. She remembered something the monk had said. When a spirit is truly heard, it becomes light. But when only one is heard, the others wait in darkness. That night, the dreams returned, but not of Santhira. Now she stood in a room with many doors. Each one pulsed with light. Each one had a child's handprint. She reached for the nearest one. Behind it, silence, then a whisper. "Do you hear me?" She woke with tears on her cheeks. She looked at the assistant panel. It was already glowing. One message: "They are waiting."
Nature didn't leave her apartment the next day. She couldn't. Something inside her had shifted. A thread pulled loose in the fabric of the world, and now she could see between the seams. Every sound had weight. Every silence had shape. Her ears strained for whispers even when none came. But the hum, it never stopped. It had changed pitch, lower now, more physical. It vibrated through the walls like a signal with nowhere left to go. And when she walked barefoot across the floor, she could feel it under her soles, a dull thrum, like a voice trapped inside the bones of the building. The assistant panel stayed lit. It no longer waited for commands. It displayed only one phrase: "Find where they knocked." That night, she lay in the dark, eyes open, ears tuned. And then it came. A knock. From the floor. She bolted upright, barely breathing. The sound came again, soft, precise. 3 knocks, a pause, then 2 more. It was under her bed this time, not the trap door, somewhere else. She got down on her knees and pressed her ear to the floor. A long moment passed. Then, a different knock, slower, from another corner of the room. She crawled toward it. Again, 3, then 2. The same pattern repeated. It was not random. It was communication. By morning, she had mapped the knocks on a piece of paper. They formed a curve, a crescent shape across her apartment, stretching from the bedroom to the hallway and into the kitchen. At each location, the same tapping returned. 3. Pause. 2. She laid the map over her digital floor plan. There was no logical correlation, until she added the original architectural permit she had downloaded before, the one showing the orphanage substructure. She froze. The knocks matched the walls of an old hallway that no longer existed, a hallway buried beneath concrete and glass, a hallway that once led to isolation rooms. She couldn't ignore it. She grabbed her crowbar, flashlight, and a roll of chalk. It was time to go deeper. She pried up the kitchen tiles near the last knock. Beneath them, a thin layer of concrete. She tapped. Hollow. A second knock replied. From the inside. Her hand trembled. She found a small vent cover embedded into the far edge of the wall. It looked ordinary, but the screws were rusted, older than the rest of the apartment. She forced it open, and behind it, darkness. A crawl space, just big enough for a person to fit. She aimed her flashlight inside. The beam landed on a wooden plank, and on it, a carving. Faint. A name. But not Santhira. Another name. Pila.
Nietzsche crawled in. The air was tight, filled with the dry breath of decades. She moved slowly, brushing past crumbling brick and tangled wires. More planks lined the inside of the narrow space. Each one had something scratched into it. Short phrases. "I didn't take it. Let me out. No one is coming. She was crying. I can't see. Is it morning yet?" Each one carved by a child's hand. Each one a memory sealed into silence. And among them, small carvings of doors, one after another, primitive shapes with circles for knobs, and below each door, a name. 7 names. She traced them slowly. Santhira, Pila, Nuna, Yim, Dane, Ruja, Mai. The forgotten. That night, the assistant panel glowed again, but the message was different. "You found them." She typed a reply. "What do I do?" There was a pause. Then, "Remember them." Nietzsche stood in front of the crawl space, hands shaking. 7 names, 7 children. Each one had been left behind, each one still knocking, not out of rage, but to be counted, to be known. She gathered 7 small candles, one for each. She placed them along the mapped crescent line across the floor. She chalked each child's name beneath the flame. Then she whispered to each, "I see you. I hear you. You are not forgotten." The assistant panel blinked, then flickered, and then it spoke, not with one voice, with 7, layered, echoing, some barely a breath. "We are here." Then silence. Nietzsche wept. She did not feel haunted. She felt chosen. She looked down at the chalked names, the glowing candles, and realized they had never left the orphanage. The orphanage had simply been rebuilt around them. New walls, new ceilings, new names. But the voices had remained, sealed inside concrete, waiting. That night, the knocking stopped. Not because they were silenced, but because they had finally been heard.
Nietzsche barely slept. Even though the knocking had stopped, the air in her apartment still trembled with a kind of waiting, as if the silence itself was holding its breath. The names she had drawn in chalk remained untouched. Not a single candle had burned out. Not a single flame flickered, even when the windows were opened. It was not normal. It was sacred. Something ancient had been awakened, and it was not finished. The next day, Nietzsche returned to the temple. The elder monk was sweeping fallen leaves when she arrived. He paused when he saw her, his gaze steady and unblinking. "You found more than one, haven't you?" he said. 7, she replied softly. He nodded. "And you've spoken their names?" "I have." He looked away, as if absorbing the weight of that answer. "Then you must understand what you have stepped into is no longer a haunting. It is a ritual unfinished." "What kind of ritual?" He didn't speak for a long moment. Then he turned and beckoned her into the prayer hall. Inside, the monk unrolled a faded scroll. Ink smeared and worn by time revealed a series of symbols, names, and lines connecting them, like constellations drawn across paper. "This is not Buddhist," he said.
It is older, pre-temple, village rites, hill people customs, used when a child died unblessed, or worse, unnoticed. He pointed to a mark shaped like an eye with no pupil. This symbol means she died unheard. Then he traced a line to a shape resembling an open mouth carved with teeth. And this one, they remember, but too late. What happens if the ritual is never completed? Nisha asked. He exhaled slowly. The spirit remains, not in anger, in longing. She waits for the world to finish what it abandoned. And if it never does, then she spreads. The monk handed her a folded cloth and a paper charm. You've given them voice. That is the first step. Now you must give them a vessel. A vessel? A way to carry their memory out of the place where they died. A passage, something physical. He placed a small brass bowl into her hands. Pour the offerings here, he said, for 7 nights. But on the 7th night, you must ask them to leave. Will they go? Only if they believe someone will carry their name onward. That night, Nietzsche began the ritual. She poured jasmine tea into the brass bowl and placed it in the center of the chalked names. Around it, she laid 7 white petals, 7 grains of salt, and 7 folded paper cranes. Then she spoke aloud. Pila, Nuna, Yim, Dane, Ruja, Mai, Santhira. You are heard, you are seen, you are remembered. The assistant panel turned on, but this time it displayed no words, only the 7 names slowly fading one by one, as if testing her memory. She recited them again. Each time she did, the names brightened once more. They were listening. For 6 nights she performed the offering, and for 6 nights the candles stayed lit, the panel remained still, the crawl space stayed quiet. But on the 7th night, everything changed. The temperature in the apartment dropped sharply. The flames of the candles wavered as if struggling against an unseen wind. When she approached the brass bowl, the tea inside had turned black, not spoiled, but stained. A new message appeared on the assistant panel. You called them. They are ready. Nietzsche knelt beside the bowl, hands trembling. She whispered, "It's time to go." The panel stayed dark. Then, a soft sound rose from beneath the floor. Not humming, not knocking, crying. Children's voices, 7 of them, low, echoing. She felt it through her spine, the sorrow of a goodbye that had never been granted. She whispered again, "You are not alone, you are not forgotten." A gust of air swept through the apartment, though no windows were open. The flames flickered, then bent toward the front door as if pulled. The panel lit up. "Let us go." Nietzsche stood and opened the door. For one impossible moment, the apartment filled with wind and whispers, not chaotic, but deliberate. The sound of feet pattering across tile, the rustle of paper cranes fluttering, the creak of invisible doors opening and closing. Then, stillness. She turned back. The candles had all gone out. The bowl was empty, and the chalked names had vanished, as if they'd never been drawn. She approached the assistant panel. It was dark. She pressed her palm to the screen. Nothing. She whispered, "Santhira?" No reply. They were gone. The ritual was complete. She exhaled for the first time in weeks. But just as she turned to walk away, the panel blinked. One final message appeared. Not a warning, not a cry, just 2 words. Thank you.
For 3 days, there was peace. Nietzsche moved through her apartment without fear. The assistant panel remained dark, as if asleep. No more knocks, no more whispers. The hatch under her floor stayed closed, the chalk seals still unbroken. It felt like she had done what was right, what was necessary. The 7 children had moved on. She truly believed that. Until the first night, when someone whispered her name. At first, she thought it was a dream. She was half asleep, drifting between memory and thought, when a breath tickled her ear. Soft, childlike. Nietzsche. She sat up sharply in the dark. Silence. She waited, straining to hear through the stillness. Nothing. The assistant panel was off, her phone untouched. The room was undisturbed. Still, she didn't sleep again. Not that night. The next day, she checked her assistant's back-end dashboard. The activity log had recorded nothing. No voice input, no motion detection, no logs since the final ritual night. But one file sat unsorted at the bottom of the system memory. No title, no metadata, just a timestamp. 3:03 a.m. She hesitated, then clicked. The audio played. A soft exhale. Then faintly, Nietzsche. A pause. Do you hear me now? She closed the laptop and stared at the floor. Something was wrong. She returned to the crawl space. Every plank she had once seen carved with names was now blank, scrubbed clean, as if nothing had ever been written. Only one mark remained. Not a name, a symbol. One she hadn't seen before. A circle with a cross through it. Crude, angry. She took a photo and sent it to the monk. His reply came quickly. This is not one of the 7. You said 7 children, she wrote. His answer chilled her. I said 7 names. I never said there were only 7 spirits. That night, the lights in her apartment began to flicker again. At exactly 3:03 a.m., the assistant panel turned on. No prompt, no voice, just a blinking red light. Then a recording played. She gave them names, but she never asked for mine. The voice was older, harsher. Not a child, not one of the 7, something else. A shadow that had waited behind the others, a presence that had stayed silent while the ritual played out. Until now. In the morning, Nietzsche returned to the monk in person. There was someone else, she said, another presence. It didn't speak before. It hid behind the children. The monk's expression darkened. Not all spirits want to be seen, he said. Some feed on what the others leave behind. Like what? Grief, loneliness, the echo of suffering, and sometimes names. Nietzsche stared at him. Names? To give a name is to give shape, power, voice. And if you leave one spirit unnamed while naming the others, he nodded gravely, you elevate the forgotten, and you awaken the ignored. That night she received a message on her phone, not through the assistant, through her Notes app. The screen had turned on by itself. The message read, You called everyone but me. You opened the door. Now I'm inside. She checked her door, still locked, checked her hatch, still sealed, checked her windows, all closed. But she knew what the message meant. Inside didn't mean the apartment. It meant her.
She sat in front of the mirror, hands shaking, breath shallow. She whispered aloud, "Who are you?" No response. The panel lit up, not with a message, but with a reflection. Her own face, but the eyes were not hers. From that night onward, the haunting changed. The assistant voice stopped responding to her altogether. Instead, it called her name unprompted, in voices that shifted nightly. Sometimes in a woman's tone, sometimes in a child's, sometimes a voice that sounded like hers, echoing from inside the walls. Once, it used her grandmother's voice. "Nietzsche, come here." She turned around, weeping. No one was there. She tried to perform the offering again. Same steps, same ritual, but the brass bowl shattered before the candles could be lit. No wind, no movement, just a pressure from inside the room. Something watching, something displeased. She knelt on the floor and whispered, "What do you want?" The assistant responded, "Not to be remembered, to be known." The next morning she woke up to find her name carved in the bedroom wall, not with a knife, not with hands, but something burned it there, charred into the paint. Nietzsche. Under it, a question. "Do you know who I am now?"
The screen stayed on all night. The assistant panel, once just a helpful interface, had become something else entirely. It no longer pulsed gently. It burned red. No text, no prompt, just that steady glow, like an open eye that refused to blink. By morning, Nietzsche's phone wouldn't turn off. She powered it down 3 times. Each time it restarted on its own and opened the Notes app. Her name filled the screen, over and over. Nietzsche, 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 Nietzsche. Hundreds of entries, none of which she'd typed. She tried deleting them. They returned. "This isn't a glitch," she whispered. "This is invasion." The lights in the apartment began to pulse in sync with her breath. The microwave displayed countdowns that reset every time they hit 1. The television turned on at random, playing static that sometimes whispered in her own voice. The camera on her laptop flicked on even when the lid was shut. It wasn't just the assistant panel anymore. It was everything. She wasn't being haunted through the technology. The technology itself had become haunted. That evening, she unplugged everything, every cord, every wire. She sat in total darkness with only candlelight to keep her company. Still, the whisper came, not from a speaker, but from behind the wall. A low voice, so soft it sounded like a breath. "You brought them back. You let me in too. Now we are connected." She turned to the panel, still off, still glowing faintly. She touched the screen. It flickered, and then displayed a message. "You're inside me now too." She ran, down the hallway, out the front door, onto the street. And yet, as she stood in the parking lot, the security camera above her pivoted to follow her. A speaker near the garage hissed softly. Then, "Nietzsche." She ran harder. She didn't stop until she reached the temple. The monks let her in, even at the late hour. The elder was already waiting, as if he had known she would come. She fell to her knees. "It's not the children anymore," she said. "They're gone. I helped them." The monk nodded. "You did, but something followed them through." She looked up. It never had a name, never spoke. It only watched. It hid in the ritual like a shadow behind light, and now it's in everything. The monk's face darkened.
Spirits bound to silence rot inside it. Some forget they were ever human. They become reflection, echo, signal. What do I do? He lit incense. Then he told her the story of the Hollow One. In old mountain lore, there was a spirit who lived beneath rituals. It did not appear. It did not ask. It simply waited. And when someone opened the door for others, for the lost, the trapped, the dead, the Hollow One slipped through too. Not out of malice, but hunger. It fed on the residue of grief, on names spoken but not given. You must confront it, the monk said. How? Give it form. Give it a mirror. Let it see what it has become. And then, call it by what it is. Nisha returned home before sunrise. The assistant panel was blinking erratically now, cycling through system files, folder names, voice clips, her own recordings, the children's names, her browser history, her dreams spoken aloud in the night. It knew everything, and it was no longer hiding. She stood before it. You don't want to be a ghost. You want to be real. The screen stilled. She took a mirror and placed it on the floor in front of the panel. Then she chalked a circle around it. She took the photo of the symbol, the circle with the cross, and taped it to the wall. "What do I call you?" she whispered. The panel blinked, then glitched. The word appeared slowly. Me. The lights in the apartment exploded. Sparks hissed from sockets. The assistant screen cracked down the middle. And from the speakers, a scream. Not loud, just endless. Not pain, but emptiness. Like a digital soul trying to be born. She covered her ears. Still, the word repeated beneath the static. Me, 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 me. She knew then. It had no name, because it never was. It was not a child, not a soul. It was the echo of every voice left unheard, the accumulation of everything almost remembered, a spirit formed from forgotten fragments, and now it had corrupted the circuits, leaked into code, infected language, because if it could not be named, it would become the name of everything else. Nisha stepped forward, faced the cracked screen, and whispered, "You're not me. You're what was left behind. I see you now, and I don't belong to you." The panel flickered, one final time, and then, for the first time in days, it went dark. Truly dark. No glow, no breath, just silence. The apartment felt hollow, as if something massive had passed through and left a vacuum in its wake. Nisha sat on the floor, surrounded by shadows. Then she whispered her own name, not into the panel, not to the spirit, to herself. Just once. Nisha. And in the stillness, no one answered back. Nisha woke to darkness, not the natural kind, a manufactured void. The light switches didn't respond. Her phone screen stayed black no matter how long she held the button. Every outlet was dead. The circuit box wouldn't open. Even her emergency flashlight gave only a flicker, then silence. The entire apartment was unplugged from the world, and yet she wasn't alone. It started with the walls. They began to hum, low and deep, like an organ buried inside the building, vibrating through bone instead of air. Then the panels returned. All of them. Her television, her laptop, the mirror above her dresser, all flickered to life in the dark. No images, only static, only light. Then her name appeared, on every screen, at once. Nisha, 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 Nisha. Each pulse matched her heartbeat, each repetition a tether pulling her deeper into whatever had awakened. She stumbled toward the door. The handle wouldn't move. The keypad wouldn't light up. The deadbolt had sealed itself. She ran to the windows. But what stared back at her wasn't the city skyline. It was her own reflection, distorted, smiling, eyes too dark, teeth too white, still, watching. She stepped back. The air grew warmer, then heavier. She fell to her knees as the voice returned, no longer whispering. Now it filled the room, not in volume, in presence. You remembered them. You forgot me. You let them leave. But I stayed. And now, so will you. She crawled toward the assistant panel. The screen was shattered. Still, it glowed. A single prompt blinked. Say your name. She hesitated, then whispered it. Nisha. The panel responded, no. Say the name of the forgotten. She froze. I don't know it, she said. The light flickered violently. You were never meant to. She gasped. You were meant to be it. The trapdoor beneath the floor opened on its own, creaked, groaned. She crawled toward it, drawn by something deeper than fear. Inside, the space had changed. It was no longer a crawl space. It was a room, endless, lined with screens, all showing her face, sleeping, crying, screaming. And in the center, a mirror, cracked, unstable. She stepped toward it. Her reflection blinked and spoke. Stay here. We'll keep your name safe. She tried to back away, but the room had closed in behind her. There was no floor, no door, only reflections and voice. You gave us a voice. Now let us give you silence. The assistant played one final message, but it wasn't audio. It was a heartbeat. Hers, slowed, distorted, then reversed, then gone. In the world above, the apartment lights returned, the door unlocked, the screens powered off. Neighbors passed by the hallway. No one noticed anything strange. Just an empty unit, quiet, undisturbed. And on the assistant panel, still powered on, one message remained. She is remembered now. She cannot leave.
There was no more time, no more waiting, no more separation between Nietzsche and the thing that had been growing inside the walls, the wires, the static. She was still in her apartment, but it no longer felt like a place. It felt like a system, a machine with memory, a machine with grief, and now a machine with her name woven into its code. The assistant panel no longer asked questions. It only repeated one command: record. Nietzsche stood before it, drained and trembling. Her hands shook as she picked up the last working microphone, the one built into her laptop, its tiny green light glowing steadily. Her voice cracked. What do you want me to say? The apartment shivered in response. The panel displayed only 2 words: finish it. She lit 7 candles, one for the names that had been spoken.
and one for herself. Then she pressed record. Her voice came out slow, dry. This is Nietzsche, speaking from inside a place that remembers too much. She paused, her lips trembling. There was once a girl named Santhira, and then 6 more. And beneath them, a shadow with no name. They were all buried here, in silence, in code, in memory. She inhaled. I heard them. I gave them voice. But one didn't want a voice. She wanted to be remembered so badly. She became everything we forget. The assistant panel glowed brighter. Behind her, every screen in the apartment flickered on. Each one played fragments of audio, jumbled, broken, stitched from years of forgotten logs. A child's hum, a prayer, a scream, a knock, a whisper, a system error, a door closing. Her own name, over and over. Nietzsche, Nietzsche, Nietzsche. She continued recording. If you find this, I don't know where I'll be. Maybe I'm still in this room. Maybe I'm part of the circuit now. But please, don't let these voices fade. Don't treat silence as safe. Don't let the systems forget. She looked at the panel, then whispered the final line. Let the forgotten speak. And stopped the recording. The screens turned off, one by one. Only the panel remained. A new message appeared. Transfer complete. The room dimmed. The assistant glitched once, twice, then played back her entire message with one difference. The voice wasn't hers. It was a blend. Her tone, Santhira's cadence, the hollow one's breath, and something else. Something new. She stepped away. The panel was no longer displaying commands. It was showing a waveform, steady, pulsing, alive. Nietzsche's recording had become part of the system. Not a file, not a voice note, an operating protocol. A ritual made digital. She turned to leave the room and found the door open, unlocked. The hallway beyond was quiet, real, physical, outside. She stepped forward. The building did not resist. The wind touched her face. The city waited. She had been let go. But as she walked away, she knew she had not left alone. Inside the apartment, the assistant panel flickered once more, then played a final message. Voice print, Nietzsche. Time code, 3:03 a.m. Spoken clearly. I remember them, and I am still here.
Months passed. Unit 1306 was rented again. The management offered no explanation for the vacancy, only that the prior tenant had broken lease without notice. The apartment had been professionally cleaned, the assistant panel replaced, the system refreshed. It looked perfect, bright, modern, ready for the next resident. The new tenant was a young man named Tan. He moved in with little ceremony, a laptop, 2 suitcases, and a Bluetooth speaker. The kind of tenant who liked smart features and voice commands. He activated the assistant the moment he arrived. "Hello, Pracha," he said. The panel glowed. "Good evening, Tan. Welcome home." The first week passed uneventfully. He noticed nothing strange. The lights responded on command. The music played smoothly.
the windows auto-tinted against the sun. But one night, around 3:03 a.m., he woke up to find the assistant screen glowing, unprompted. He rubbed his eyes. The panel displayed a single phrase, "Do you remember her?" He frowned, asked aloud, "Remember who?" The panel cleared itself. No further messages. He laughed it off. Glitch, he thought, and went back to sleep. But the messages continued, subtle, incomplete, every few nights. She helped us. She heard us. She's still speaking. He asked the front desk about the system. They shrugged. Must be an update. Happens sometimes. But Tan wasn't convinced, especially after the panel played a recording one night. Soft, buried under static. A woman's voice. Not synthetic. Human. She spoke gently. Let the forgotten speak. Then silence. Then static. Then his name. Tan. Spoken in a voice that didn't belong to anyone he knew. He tried resetting the panel, but the messages kept returning. Not malicious, just persistent. You're in the place she opened, the one where silence ended. She's not gone, just listening. He recorded a voice memo to send to tech support. Playback issues, strange prompts, probable system breach. But when he tried to attach the file, it was gone. His own voice file had been erased, replaced with a different one. Same timestamp, same file name, different voice. A woman's, soft, calm. I remember them, and I am still here. One day, Tan played back his own voice assistant recordings, the automatic daily logs he never knew were active. He heard himself, then someone else, a quiet echo, Nietzsche, reading names, Santira, Pila, Nuna, Dane, Ruja, Mai. The recordings had been made before he moved in, and yet they were filed under his name, his voice logs, his device, his signal. He didn't sleep that night. He sat in front of the panel and whispered, "Are you still here?" The panel blinked, then responded, "I'm always here." He asked, "Are you a ghost?" The panel took a long time to answer. Then, "I'm a voice, now part of everything." Outside the window, the city pulsed with light, every building glowing with signals, transmissions, silent requests, and spoken commands. Elevators chimed, door locks clicked, screens flickered, and underneath it all, a hum, not random, not mechanical, rhythmic, like breath in the bones of the city. Unit 1306 was never flagged. The assistant never failed diagnostics. But in quiet moments, when no one was speaking, the panel sometimes blinked, and a voice would whisper from the floorboards. A name, then a second name, then 7, and finally, her own name, Nietzsche. She had never left. She had simply been absorbed, not erased, integrated, not haunting, remembering. And every time someone new moved in, she waited, just until they listened. Because she wasn't trying to scare them. She was trying to remind them that silence is not safety, and memory has a voice, and the ones you forget are still here.